Right now, though, Bill Bender, kind enough to give us some time, Sporting News National College Football writer on your radio. Bill, happy holidays. How are you?
Hey, happy holidays. Thanks for having me on.
Bill, I appreciate your time. Bill, what did you think yesterday? You've covered a lot of these national signing days from near and afar. When you kind of look through and you see, the NIL money is, rampant in the sport, which I am totally fine for players getting money personally. You see Jackson State picking up, right here in the great state of Mississippi, picking up the number 1 player or number 2 player in the country. What were you thinking, and how do you kind of frame up where we are in college football when it comes to recruiting and, player eval and that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, there's a call to move signing day, you know what I mean? Revamp this early signing day. Obviously, Deion Sanders made a huge splash yesterday by pulling in the top recruit, and there's a multitude of reasons for that to happen, and NIL is one of them. So it was, I think the shine off signing day is worn off a little bit, and college football's starting to feel like a little more like the NFL, but I think they need to move it back so that it doesn't feel as rushed as it did yesterday and in previous seasons.
He's on Twitter at BillBender92. Check him out at the Sporting News, at Sporting News. Urban Meyer, I do want to ask you this. As far as Urban Meyer is concerned, were you shocked that, the news came down so quickly on Urban Meyer? They didn't even finish the year out. And you put an article out earlier, could Urban Meyer return to college? Is there interest in Meyer back in the college ranks after, some snafus here with Jacksonville and then some hiccups along the way at the end of his college tenure?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to have to take some time off before that happens. I mean, obviously, Brett McMurphy's story earlier this year said 85% of Power 5 directors aren't going to do that. And but he is a hyper-successful college coach. I was not shocked so much as acceleration of the timeline of his Jacksonville demise, I guess is how I would put it. A little surprising.
Yeah, I actually was extremely surprised, and I figured he would have at least gotten to the end of the year before they made the move. But obviously, there's more at play here than even we know. Hey, the 2021 Sporting News Player of the Year is Bryce Young. That is no surprise. Heisman Trophy winner. Alabama, I believe, is going to be without John Mechie III in the playoffs. When you look at the college football playoff and the Final Four going into the last weekend, which would be championship weekend, I think a lot of people said Georgia. Is it now? Is it for sure Alabama, or do you like a Michigan or a Georgia to possibly in a matchup with Alabama to knock off Nick Saban's club?
I think Alabama will be the heavy favorite, and with good reason. I mean, they showed why against Georgia. They didn't run the ball well in that game, and they will have to make some adjustments without Mechie. He was a big part of that first half onslaught, but it's going to be hard to beat them. I think Cincinnati's up against them, and then Georgia-Michigan will be a fun game, though. Those two teams do the same things. They both have a lot of talent. Georgia was the dominant team in the regular season, but Michigan arguably was the hottest team at the end of the year, so I think that adds up to what should be a really good game.
Bill, when you look at teams that we want to see, or at least we're looking to see, had a big day yesterday. Texas is one of them. They get Quinn Ewers from Ohio State, who comes in now. He goes back home. A lot of Texas former Texas players tweeting at him on social media or on the social media platforms, reaching out to him saying, "Hey, come back and kind of help Texas come back," so to speak. Texas with a disaster the second half of the year this year. Just from 10,000 feet, how far off is Steve Sarkisian from having Texas at least competitive again, back to a 7-5 type team, or to get them back at least in the conversation on the national level?
Well, I mean, they'll always be in the national conversation for right or wrong, but
sure.
They've got to start winning the close games. They lost close games with Tom Herman, they lost close games with Charlie Strong, and they're losing close games with Sark in his first year, and maybe Ewers tilts the field a little bit, and we'll see. I mean, it's really exciting to see a quarterback of that talent. I mean, obviously they had a really good recruiting class, so did A&M, and I think a big piece of that is NIL. These schools have a ton of resources. They take football seriously in Texas, and that's going to start to add up with each cycle.
Staying in the state of Texas, Jimbo Fisher, a guy who, obviously they're picking up a transfer quarterback, Max Johnson from LSU. They're making some waves as well. And then recruiting-wise, Jimbo Fisher has Texas A&M recruiting as well as they have, say, in the last 10 to 15 years. But what is the pulse on Jimbo Fisher? A guy that's paid a ton of money, again, in that state of Texas, where, football is king in that state. And he, did get the win over Alabama this year. But what is the pulse on him in that program in his tenure there?
I mean, if he keeps recruiting like this, it's going to take care of itself. I mean, they showed they could beat Alabama. They were inconsistent on the field. They lost some games. I mean, it's an every week thing. But, I mean, Jimbo's done this before. He told people this, that he won 30 games in a row at Florida State. He's won a national title. He knows how to recruit. And I think he's used those Florida connections to continue recruiting well at A&M. Now, at a certain point, like you said, when you make that much money, you're going to want the payoff, and we'll see if they get that. But I think that program's in the right direction. They're going to feel like going into next season that they can compete with Bama. They've shown they can do that on the field. They just got to do it every week.
And a couple more questions here. I want to come back to, and I appreciate you jumping on with us, bouncing around college football. Come back to Jackson State because, and I saw that you actually shared this article, and I did too, from Kari Thompson, who writes on Jackson State. Deion Sanders, a lot of people laughed, and we were some of them, and said, because we remember Deion Sanders coming to Jackson, Mississippi to coach a high school football game at Madison Regional Academy back last summer, and then he takes the Jackson State job, and everybody asked, what is this about? What is the end game for Deion Sanders? With his ability to recruit athletes now, and he has shown that he can do that, is it in his future to be a Power 5 head football coach?
I mean, I think so, and it's just going to be his value decision. Does he want to stay at Jackson State and continue to elevate HBCUs, which he did yesterday? Kari wrote an outstanding column. I read that. One of my buddies used to be the sports editor over there at Clarion Ledger, so I keep in touch with them. And, I think that's the question. Does he stay and build Jackson State and continue to kind of thwart the establishment, so to speak, or does he go to Florida State? I mean, that's the biggest story to me is he took the best recruit from the school where he's arguably the biggest celebrity ever. So that was the big wrinkle in that for me.
And lastly, when you look at the new head football coaches coming in, and just from 10,000 feet, Lincoln Riley to USC, when you look at Brian Kelly to LSU, you look at Billy Napier to Florida, which one is set up to have the biggest coming out party, so to speak, in year one?
I think Napier will do well. I mean, I think all of those guys will do well, but I think Napier will get a different kind of Florida going. I trust his track record from Louisiana. I don't know if it'll happen in year one, but I think once he gets his guys and gets that program rolling, I've had my eye on him for a couple cycles as a guy that I think can do well. But, I mean, all three will do well.
Find him on Twitter at BillBender92. He is Bill Bender with the Sporting News. Bill, happy holidays, my friend. I appreciate you as always. We'll talk soon.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
Thanks so much. Bill Bender on the Malone Roofing Carla line. Of course, you can find them on their website at ecmalone.com, 8337 Malone. That is Malone Roofing Services here in Jackson, Mississippi, covering the state of Mississippi and the region. We'll have Rafael Esparza, mybookie.ag, as we'll get some insight on some bowl games coming up. And, of course, that's going to be at 4:30. You can get over to AmeriStarCasino.com and grab the Bet Builder. You've got 3 games coming up tomorrow. You can play right here at Ameristar. Toledo, Middle Tennessee. Toledo is a 10-point favorite over Middle Tennessee. You got Coastal Carolina, Northern Illinois. Coastal is a 10.5-point favorite. James Madison is a 4.5-point underdog to North Dakota State in their bowl game. Coming up on Saturday, you've got, several ball games, believe it or not. Saturday, you got App State versus Western Kentucky early. South Carolina State, Jackson State, that you can play right here at Ameristar. Jackson State is a 10.5-point favorite. You can play that here at the end zone. South Dakota State versus Montana State. And coming up in the afternoon, starting at 1:15, you got UTEP, Fresno State, UAB, BYU. You've got Liberty, Eastern Michigan. And on the nightcap, you've got Marshall, Louisiana Lafayette, and Oregon State versus Utah State. We are brought to you by the station in Madison. Make sure you go to the website and see what all they can offer you. As you can plan your event or function at the station, go to the station